Hello, Book 2. I went to the Brattle this morning, first thing. It was nice and cool. It's a beautiful day. And I had a goal in mind. I admit it's kind of fruitless, but I tried to have a goal in mind. One thing you don't want to do, the Brattle Bookshop, for those of you who are new, is a great used bookstore in downtown Boston that has not only great selection in the inside of the store, the 3 floors of the store, which is what we think of when we automatically think of a great bookstore, but also an entire lot of bargain carts, $1, $3, and $5 books, which is also great and which is also constantly changing. And the one thing that you shouldn't do when you patrol the bargain carts of the Brattle the way I do is try to impose any kind of stricture on what you're going to find, because that will ruin the deal. Karma will be paying attention and will work against you. You won't find anything. The better by far to listen to the cards. Better by far to find out what's there and map your interests onto that instead of going with your interests and trying to get the carts to adhere. That's the way I find all the treasures that I find. And my goal today was not to impose my will on the sale carts, but rather it was more in terms of the gigantic number of books here at Hyde Cottage. My goal was eyes on the prize. Okay, Book 2. Eyes on the prize. I'm the cute one. My goal was something far more modest. It was to leave with a small number of books. Not to leave laden down with books, in full shoulder bag, a full tote bag. It was to be selective. It was to be selective. And I got, what did I get here? 5 books, which I think is pretty good for the Brattle, when I've been known to bring 25 books back with me, because one of the great things about the bargain carts is that you can just get everything that you find that's of interest. I mean, if every book is $1, you can't carry 25 books. So you're limited by, how much you can lug back home, not by money. It's actually wonderful. It's on a day like today, the sun is shining, the birds are chirping, and the weather isn't bad. I mean, Deb and I used to go to the Brattle in all weathers. Literally, it would be sleeting outside. As long as the carts weren't covered, we would go. And sometimes even when they weren't, we would go just to stand around. But on a beautiful day like this, I strongly encourage it. But I wanted to show you the books that I got, and they range all over the map, and one of them actually pinges into another aspect of videos. So this is going to be a kind of a combination video. I'm giving you a Brattle book haul here, but also the Reading Rush, Day 4. The prompt for the Reading Rush, the BookTube event that's clogging your subscription feed, I'm sure. Day 4 of the Reading Rush, the prompt is to read the first book by an author. And I actually wasn't thinking about that when I went to the Brattle. I was figuring, I knew that was the prompt, and I was figuring, well, I have a million books here, including on my work shelf, stuff that I'm intending to get to. Surely one of those will be a debut. It won't be hard to find. I wasn't thinking of that when I was picking out the books I wanted at the Brattle. But when I got back, I found out that one of them is, in fact, a first novel. And the prompt only says, read the first novel by an author. It doesn't specify that it has to be the first time you've read that novel. And this is a book that I've been meaning to reread. So I managed to do it. So we'll get to that. The first one is a double. I have read this book many times. I have bought many, many copies. I've given many copies away. And when I saw it in a nice, hand-sized trade paperback at the Brattle today, I thought, I just did a quick mental inventory and thought, oh wait, you don't have that. You gave away your previous copy, I think, to someone who watches this channel. So I grabbed it. It was $1. It's in perfect condition. And then I got it back here, and a quick look on the shelf realized, no, you do still have a copy. So now I have a double, and that's okay. This is it's a great book, but a sad one. This is The Death of a President by William Manchester, about President Kennedy, about his death, about everything that happened in Dealey Plaza, about the politics leading up to that, and also about the Kennedy administration, the Kennedy years. It's a brutal, eloquent book, an amazing thing. And one of the linchpins that always drive me crazy when Kennedy scoffers talk about court historians, the raft of books that were written either during Kennedy's lifetime or immediately after his death by retainers or by people who were hired by the family. Such skepticism always bothers me. A good baker's half dozen of the books that are dismissed by such people in such a way are actually classics, written by men who would never in a million years sully the name of their old boss, their old friend, their old mentor, their old benefactor by lying about him. In many of those cases, in many of the cases of those books, the authors, either in the book or in their letters or in memoirs, say what practically everyone at that time said, which is some variation of, I knew I couldn't lay on the BS because I could hear his voice, that really low voice. I could hear his quacking New England low rumble in my ear saying, oh, will you knock it off? And when you hear that from the subject of your encomiums, you are encouraged to be honest. It drives me nuts. The books have their faults. Of course they do. But when I hear this, for instance, is a masterwork of American history and biography. When I hear it lumped in with a whole bunch of other really good books, like The Thousand Days, for instance, and written off as just so much apparatchik work, drives me nuts. So I have this in a trade paperback, and maybe I will just give away my hardcover. The trade paperback will do just as well. Once I reinforce it, it'll be fine for years. It takes up less space and is less heavy. I don't know. One way or another, it was a mistake on my part. This next one is a classic. I read it and loved it when it first came out, and have been kind of sort of hoping that I would find a hardcover with a dust jacket so that I could get it again, keep it. It's certainly a keeper of a book, and also reread it. I often use books that I find surreptitiously at the Brattle as an excuse to reread them. And today I did not find a hardcover with a dust jacket. I did find a UK trade paperback, an old UK trade paperback. And this is by Gay Daly, and it's called PreRaphaelites and Love. I'm trying to arrange things here so that you can see me, Frida, and the book. And this is her study of, it's hard to say, it's on the surface, at least in its blueprint, it is her study of the women who filled the world of the Pre-Raphaelites, including filling their artwork. She makes a point, if I remember correctly, it's been a long time since I read this, but she makes a point early in the book, I think in her preface, that the Pre-Raphaelites never included any women in their artwork except from life. They always drew and painted and sketched women from life, and they went far afield. It wasn't just friends of theirs. It was all sorts of people that they went and found to be their models. And on paper, the blueprint sketch of this thing is that it was meant to be a study of those women, but it ends up being a study of the Pre-Raphaelites, not just the women, but the men, and not just the men and women, but the art and the time. It's just a classic, an absolute classic. And I find the Pre-Raphaelites fascinating. And I don't have as many books about them as I would want, and this is one to have. Absolutely, it's one to have. And I found it in a cute little paperback. Again, it will require a little reinforcing, but once I do that, it'll be fine to sit on the shelf, and I will reread it too. I'm going to use this Brattle trip as an excuse to reread not only Pre-Raphaelites and Love, but also Death of a President, because it's been a good 10 years since I read Manchester. And then the next book is the one that fulfills the reading rush as to read an author's first book. This is by Jenny White, and it's the Sultans Seal in a gorgeous trade paperback that I don't remember ever having seen before. This is a Kamil Pasha novel set in 1886 Istanbul. The naked body of an Englishwoman washes ashore, wearing a pendant inscribed with the Sultan's seal. Magistrate Kamil Pasha must uncover her murderer while treading lightly around the empire's rulers and the foreigners trying to tear it apart. As Jenny White transports us to a time of danger in the waning years of the Ottoman Empire, she brings a sumptuous tale about the contradictory desires of the human soul. And I read this when it first came out. It got blurbed. Everybody loved it. Everybody who read this loved it. And I read this, when did this come out? 2006. So right before I got back into book reviewing. Right before I re-entered the book reviewing world. Otherwise, I would certainly have written about this, praised it to the skies. And it's been that long. It's been well over a decade since I read this. And it is the author's first book. So it is going to count as Reading Rush Day 4. What are you doing, baby? Huh? What are you doing? Your fans want to see you, baby girl. What are you doing, baby? Why are you so pretty? Anyway, sorry about the coo-cooing. The next book is a skinny thing, and it's an author that I've never liked, and I knew that he wrote this book, and I don't think I ever read it. I think I just sort of thought, you know, you're not the Pope. I don't need to read your Obiter Dicta. But it has been on my mind a bit since it came out. Again, we need the date. 1994. And so I was happy to see it again because I know where it's going to end up. It's going to end up on the two bookcases that are devoted to books about books about book reviewing. Do you want help? Do you want to get down? She often very, very politely asks for help when she doesn't need it. All she has to do is bound down onto the floor, but she wanted me to hold her hand. There you go. There you go. Me Sainted Ma always used to say, whenever I would say something like that, she would always get fake stern and say, "It's a paw, you know, it's not a hand. They're not people." And I would always point out to her, well, considering, you know, Ma, considering that you and I and all humans are apes, your hands are paws too. And she would say, "Don't you blaspheme." But anyway, the book in question is Criminal Convictions. By Nicholas Freeling, who was a prolific mystery author, and who had a healthy self-regard. He had a healthy self-regard, and I never liked any of his mysteries. They very much seemed to me to be artificial, to be posturing, and it didn't help any that he made it very well known to everybody he knew in the literary community and the critical community that the more praiseworthy the blurb for a book, the better he would like it. Which is, I think, the only conceivable reason why, in his lifetime, he got. I think he might be dead. I'm not 100% sure. I didn't check, but he was born in like the 1920s, so I'm thinking the odds are good. but in his lifetime, he got a blurb that should be absolute nonsense, and he should have repudiated it out of a sense of self-worth. Somebody called him the only contemporary mystery writer fit to stand next to Simenon, and I don't know what to make about that. No one's ever heard of Nicholas Freeling, and all of his books are out of print in America and will anyway. This is not a murder mystery, and this is not technically a book about murder mysteries. It's rather, although he tries to make it so, he was fond of saying that all great writers are mystery writers, are crime writers. And like so many other of the pronouncements that he always came out with, that was designed to gently guide you towards his preferred conclusion. If he pronounces that all great writers are crime writers, he's gently nudging you to say, wait a minute, aren't you a crime writer? And if that follows, then maybe you're... and I don't believe that all great writers are crime writers. That seems kind of silly to me. Seems to overlook a handful of the greatest writers in the world. Most of whom were women, and that might be explained by something else. But this is mainly a collection of his reflections on his formative literary figures. So you've got Stendhal, you've got Joseph Conrad. You've got Rudyard Kipling. I seem to remember his essay on Rudyard Kipling is really good. He did essays on mystery writers. He did one on Dorothy Sayers that I thought was a little flyweight, but I'll be glad to read it again. I think there's one on Raymond Chandler. And in his de rigueur essay on Simenon himself, he has a simple line. There's a simple line in that piece. I haven't read it in forever. I can't wait to just dig in. It's a skinny thing, so I'll read this right away. But there's a line in his appreciation of Simenon that has stuck with me all these years, and that I remember every time I get one of those new Penguin reprints, or one of those new Penguin trade paperback editions of their new translations of Simenon. Freeling says just simply that no one ever wrote better French than Simenon. And that just fascinates me. I don't know whether I agree with it or not, but it fascinates me. It's one of those aphoristic observations that an author will sometimes make that just sticks with you. for a long time. So I was glad to find this. I'm sure that I will appreciate it. I'm sure that I will want to keep it and put it in with the literary books. I'm sure that I will. And then the last one I got today, it's a hardcover. And the minute I've said this many times at the Brattle, when I go there, I will see a book and suddenly the light will dawn and I will think, oh my God, you don't right now have a copy of that book. How is that even possible considering how much you love it? The Brattle's constant turnover of books is great for that. But it's still a little bit unnerving. It's still a little bit unnerving that for instance, I'm poring over these books all the time. It's unnerving that I don't come to the realization of what's missing on my own, that I need to see it at the Brattle to remember, oh my God, you don't have a copy of that and you love it. This is definitely a case of that. This is by Orson Scott Card, and this is Prenttice Album. This is the third book in his Tales of Alvin Maker, which is set in an alternate colonial-era America. Very different in its history, very different in its geographical makeup, and also weaving in a folklorish element of fantasy. Because in this world, in the world of Alvin Maker, most people have knacks, what Orson Scott Card calls knacks. Small talents or larger ones, just depending, and no rhyme or reason, no guild, no ability to teach, it's all inborn. So some knacks, some people with a knacks can set fire at a remote distance by mental effort. Some people, like for instance, in these books, Napoleon has the knack of swaying other people's minds to what he wants them to do when they're in his proximity. And there are many, many others. And every once in a great while in this world, someone comes along who has the summation, the sort of conglomeration of all knacks, and they are a maker. Essentially all-powerful, essentially able to manipulate matter and energy at a subatomic level, although no words like that are, of course, ever used. And Alvin is one of those people, the seventh son of a seventh son, and a totally unassuming, normal guy. It's lucky for the world. It's not stressed by a card, but it's lucky for the world. We realize as we're reading, it's lucky for the world that this distinction came to Alvin as opposed to someone horrible or evil. These have a wonderful sing-songy folklore quality. I love the first book and the second book, The Seventh Son, and the first book is called The Seventh Son. I think the second book is called The Screaming Siren. And then we have the third book, which is just called Prenttice Album, and which has some wonderful, wonderful bits in it, including the construction of the no-go plow, in which Alvin, through his maker abilities, forges a plow that is essentially sentient. It's a little bit hard to explain, but if you read it, you will fall in love with it, I think. I myself think there are 3 or 4 more Alvin Maker books after this one. I think they get worse after Prenttice Album. They get longer, they get more turgid, and I think there's a reason for that. I think I know the reason for that. I don't like it, but Orson Scott Card was a bit of a trailblazer with the Prenttice Album books. He set up sort of a chat room, a discussion forum about Hat Rack River, about the area where these stories take place, and fans got to write in at great length about what they thought was connecting these stories, about what they thought might happen in future stories, and I think you can draw a direct line to the downfall of the series by Card listening to that. I think that it is 30 years ahead of time, but still a predecessor of why there will be no final Song of Ice and Fire book from George R. R. Martin for the exact same reason. Because the author has spent way too much time listening to people who are living in his own created world and thinking, the deadly thoughts for a writer, thinking, that person's idea of what happens next is actually better than the idea I had. Or, that person says this can't happen because of something in another book. I guess that's true, and I was kind of counting on doing that. The minute a writer starts thinking that, the minute they start outsourcing their own creativity, I can't help but think that series is going to go downhill. And I think this series did. I would love it if there were a new Prenttice Album book that was really good, that was good in the nature of the first 3 books. But I'll take this one. I was amazed, horrified, when I saw this to realize that I don't have a copy. So now I do. And I will be doing my best not to get rid of this copy. So that was a Brattle trip, and also a Reading Rush Day 4. So we have Prenttice Album by Orson Scott Card. We have Criminal Convictions by Nicholas Freely. May he maybe rest in peace. As soon as I'm done with the video, I will Wikipedia him to see if he is dead. Then The Sultans Seal by Jenny White, which is the first in this series of murder mysteries, and her first book, so I'm right on it. Then PreRaphaelites and Love, in a handy little UK trade paperback, and The Death of a President by William Manchester, which I am going to reread. The timing is just too surreptitious for me not to. So I will reinforce it, and I will reread it, and we'll be sad all over again. But anyway, that was the Brattle for today. I might go back again this week. I had a wonderful visit. It's just a wonderful time. It always is when I go. So I might go back again. Frida was perfectly fine while I was gone, and that's all that I really care about. If I do, of course, you will be the first to know. Thank you, Book 2.